it's your man, Cordy Brown Jr. We're just here doing a little work, and we were doing some reminiscing about back when we were in the comedy business. So it was just kind of interesting because a lot of the people who are now dominating the comedy scene, I wouldn't say we were integral in starting their career, but Pops, as we were finishing up our era being in the streets, Pop had bought a nightclub, and the smallest of the world. I hooked up with some guys in New York. They were some brothers that were finishing up at Columbia, and they ended up being cool with a brother. Shout out to Big Ed. Big Ed had a nightclub in New York, right in Midtown Manhattan, right by the Marquis Marriott, called Indigo Blues. On a whole different story, just the brother was, and he was doing his thing. And here he's home now, so shout out to Ed and the whole Indigo Blues family. But anyway, back in the 90s, he had started doing comedy shows. So that thing went on well, and so some of my guys from New York that were frat brothers with him. Shout out to Omega Psi Phi. These were all some Q dogs. I'm Alpha, but different issue. Anyway, long story short, through those guys working with him at Indigo Blues in Manhattan, my dad ends up buying the club in like '93, and just the way the old man is and things, I brought up to him. I said, I got some contacts with some guys who are bringing in some comedy acts and some old time entertaining acts. And he was like, well, why don't you tell them to come to town? Let's talk about it. Maybe we'll start throwing some shows at the club. So the club's called the Cotillion Club, right in northwest side of Detroit. And we would end up transforming it into being like the Cotton Club of the hood. So I bring in my guys, Walt and Jay from New York. They come, they talk to my old man, tell him how this whole kind of comedy thing ends up working. And, we were knee deep in the last phase of our street life. And we just started booking shows. So like some of the guys that we booked at the time, we knew they were funny, but you didn't know where they were going to go on to be. One of the ones that really stick out to me was Mike Epps. So, it was still a mom and pop kind of operation. So when the comedians would come in, it was like my job to pick them up from the airport. And so, we'd always want to kind of make them as comfortable as possible. We're not realizing that these guys are on like the Chitlin circuit, and like when they're on BET or Def Comedy Jam, they're riding buses and staying in little motels. So we didn't even know how that was going down. So we treated them really nice. I'd pick them up in the Benz, and we'd put them up in the Marriott or the Hilton or the Hyatt. So anyway, I pick up Mike Epps, and he's like, oh, nice Benz. He's like, oh, y'all doing good out here in Detroit. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, And he comes to the show. He does his two shows. We double booked him. We did 2 shows in one night. And at the end of the night, given our situation and just being kind of old school, we didn't write checks for anything. So we take him to the back. I don't know what we paid him for the 2 shows, maybe like $3,000 for 2 shows. And we, count them out the $3,000, and then tell them, take a couple bottles of champagne back to your hotel room. And when we get back to the Hyatt Regency, I think we had put Mike up in, and me and him did a little partying together. Shout out to Mike Epps. So glad and so happy for the success he ended up finding after that. But he's like, man, I know who you are. I know who you guys are. And I'm like, what do you mean you know who we are? He's like, y'all the Black Mafia. So all respect to Big Beach and that crew. They were calling us the Black Mafia here in Detroit, popping them back in the 70s. With all due respect to BMF. He's like, Mike Epps is like, nah, man, I know who y'all are. Y'all the Black Mafia. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, what has he seen around the club? Did he see something he wasn't supposed to see? But he was just being funny, which is what he is. And he's like, look, man, I've been around the block before. He's like, you niggas ain't got a notepad. Y'all ain't got a receipt pad. Y'all ain't got an ink pen or a crayon. Y'all pay for our flight tickets in cash. You pay for our hotels in cash. You give us cash for spending. You cash us out even before we done with the set. He's like, I know what kind of scene this is. I was like, it was like, Pops is old school. Like, he was a very insightful man.
Yeah, that's interesting.
T.K. Kirkland, Cheryl Underwood, all there.
Remember Cheryl Underwood had us laugh. Remember Cheryl.
We hung out with her.
We hung out
basically.
with her, and that's when we realized she's just funny.
She's just a funny
Like
woman.
she's just funny and down to earth. But Cheryl, T.K. Kirkland, JB Smooth, Mike Epps. I just saw him recently on a show.
Darnell Small again.
Darnell
Hamburger.
Smalls, Hamburger. Man, listen, Courtney, pretty much everybody, anybody. Because back then, you're talking about the '90s before black comedy really took off.
Yeah.
So all of them, and the thing about it, they all love because they don't have a club like this. Like to this day, there's no like black comedy club, bro. That was huge. Cotillion Club was huge.
He was like, y'all the Black Mafia. And I just, I was like, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, only if you knew, brother. That's only if you knew the noise we were really making. So that was really cool. And again, he was just a really nice guy, really down to earth. And it did not really surprise me when he went on, with the success he had with the Friday series, messing with Ice Cube and all the other success he had, because some of these guys you just could see like if they ever got a break. And looking back on it, I really got some appreciation because they were telling us because on another note, than that, JB Smooth, who we brought in, same kind of thing. We treated JB Smooth really good, and JB Smooth goes on to talking about that you guys treat us better than BET. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, man, BET be putting us up in the Super 8 motel or putting us up in the Eco Lodge. Y'all laying us out in the Marriott, giving us expense money. Y'all flying us in, flying us out. I'm like, well, man, that's kind of how we do. So, yeah. And speaking on that JB Smooth, episode, at the time when we booked JB Smooth, But the time we had booked JB Smooth, we had just finished off the end of that deal with the Pakistanis, which, just to kind of put some time in preference that you got to kind of go back and look at some of the old stuff. So that was like at the end of like that $1 million run. And so it was just a whole lot going on. It was really cool that, again, JB Smooth, another one of those guys that when you saw him, you kind of said, if this guy ever gets a break, he'll make something happen. And on that same kind of note of just kind of how much was going on while we were doing this whole comedy thing, Cheryl Underwood, who is just as funny as she is on TV, she is even funnier in person. So Cheryl, we did a show with Cheryl Underwood and T.K. Kirkland. It's like the $40,000 bag man, because shout out to my brother CT. CT sitting down right now. I hope he be home soon. So it was a guy that we were messing with, close friend of the family named CT. And, obviously the whole crew, all the guys that Pops was hustling with would always attend the comedy shows and the concerts we were putting on. And it just ended up turning into being a good opportunity for everybody to kind of take care of their business. So CT comes by, see the old man. He's got a little check for him. He got a brown paper bag, $40,000 in it. Him and Pops get so caught up in just the people coming and going in the club. Pops puts the 40,000 on top of his car. Him and CT finish talking. Everybody goes inside the club. Cheryl Underwood was just, even though I think at the time T.K. Kirkland was the headliner of the show, and not that he's not funny as hell too, but Cheryl Underwood really stole the show that night. And one of the waitresses comes in and says to my pops, she's like, "Hey, Mr. Brown, you left your food on top of your car. Here's your bag. Here's your bag." And the old man, like, I left some food on top of the car, and he looks in the bag, and it's the $40,000. It's been sitting out on the top of it, on the hood of his car for like 2 hours. $40,000 in a brown paper bag. And just to kind of put in perspective the sign of the times, and you just never know when those kind of times will come to an end. And he looks at me and he looks at CT and he's just like, niggas giving me money so quick I can't even keep track of it. 40,000 was so run of the mill for somebody to be handing them at the time, you know. That's a joke in and of itself. But later on that night, to just show you really what a down to earth and just funny sister Cheryl Underwood is, she took a liking to one of my associates, you know, and she's like, Mr. Brown, if you tell your pretty friend to come on up to my suite, that nice suite that y'all done got me for the night, I might be willing to come back and do a couple shows for free. Unfortunately, my friend is very selfish, and he wouldn't take Miss Underwood up on her indecent proposal. But yeah, that was a really good run. We started that in '93, and we did that comedy series, and a lot of the old school groups too, the Enchantments, Intruders, Blue Magic, and just all off a hunch, which just goes back to some entrepreneurial kind of things, you know. Even aside, you know, we did more than just, you know, move the bag and that kind of stuff. Again, these were some black guys, some Ivy League guys and college guys that I hooked up with, just running around Columbia University. They ran into some people who knew some things. Pops had the money, and we ended up bringing like first class comedy to the neighborhood. So that's also, you know, one of the things we like to talk about here at Big Boss is, in America, everybody's got kind of an angle or a story when you see them do something. But if you got a dream, you know, go for it. We never really thought about getting into the concert or the comedy business or the concert promoting business. But you know, it was an awesome time.
Like, I think you told me that when they closed down, people was fiending for it in Detroit.
A couple people tried because we started something. We started something. A couple people tried, but no blacks really owned venues suited for it. Because you guys had Pops build a stage. You guys took the shell of the Continuum Club and really turned it Metamorphosis. Shout out to those guys that became the house band.
Yeah,
remember hiring our house band to perform. Then you guys gave opportunities to some of the big, like downtown Tony Brown.
Listen, that was remember he needed a spot. Yeah,
he needed a spot.
He was a good spot for him. I mean, plus
brought in
as much as he could try to get him working. We tried to do Tony. Shout out to Tony Brown.
Tony had some issues, but a hell of a comedian.
But listen, it goes back to what I was saying. Everything we did, y'all did, was not for yourselves, but to help other black, bring people up, bro. And that if we're gonna do this, that's the way to do it. If you think about it, like if we're gonna benefit, bring somebody up with you. You know, give them an opportunity. So think about it, Cordy. That business you in, sort of launched careers, bro.
Oh well. Yeah.
So like, you know, you hey, more power to you.
No, it's one of a many of the.
I know
I say for myself, a many of the entrepreneurial things I've done in my life. That 3-year run I had with you guys, bringing in those acts, was a high point.
Here in NYC, in the heart of the theater district, at the Marquis Marriott, doing a little content create, having some meetings, of which we've been very fruitful, of which you guys will see the results of very, very soon. So while we've been here in the Big Apple, we've been reminiscing about the Detroit-New York connection and how from Broadway here, we're on 45th between Broadway and 8th, we're on 127th Street and Lenox, to how it ties back into Geneva and Hamilton, or French Road and McGaffin. So right here, the Marquis Marriott, this used to be Pop's, basically, New York office. All through that Pakistani plug run, this is where he would come, set up base, to really navigate, take his meetings. Sometimes the carriers would come in, he'd bring the crew, they'd come do what they needed to do, grab the package, get it back to New York. But a lot of times it was just here for meetings, to meet with, to connect people, to figure out how to do the next move. Now, of course, you guys have heard me and Eddie Baby talk about a joint called Indigo Blues. Indigo Blues is basically where it's now Bond 45. This was a club ran by the brother that we call Big Ed, not to be confused with Big Ed Hansett from Detroit. Of course, we had some tie-ins with our family, with Lala and the rest, and because of Tony R.I.P. But Big Ed in New York, who we met through a brother named Money Walt. Shout out to Money Walt down there in Fort Lauderdale. Money Walt had hooked us up with this brother from the Bronx, Big Ed, who had a nightclub comedy show that was right here. And this is where we end up carrying on where Ed ends up having to shut down, because we're going to get into that. Mike Epps, Cheryl Underwood, J.B. Smooth, Darnell Rawls, Hamburg, all those acts we got access to right here. Wendy Williams was up and coming and struggling. Ed used to give her a play and let her host some of his Thursday night comedy shows at Indigo Blues. So Ed doing his thing, he moving around good. Pops would sometimes be in town, camped out here at the Marriott holding court. Eddie Baby be coming in town to see the Dominicans, Kid Cuba, and that crew. It'd be like a family reunion sometime when Eddie and 250 be in town, and we come meet Pops down here, run up Pops' room charge because I got the same name, so we could go to the steakhouse, up to the viewing tower, all of the above, just being spoiled Kingpin's kids kind of stuff. But once Eddie got tied into Big Ed through me, through Money Walt, Eddie would come cop his bricks right here in the theater district at Indigo Blues. Now, this thing get to going good, and one particular fateful day, Eddie and Big Ed and Eddie doing their deal, and Big Ed say, you know what, I should just bring the bag to Detroit. Tomorrow I'm picking up 20 of them joints. And we tell him, yeah, man, just come to Detroit. We set you up in a hotel. You can run through the bag. You'll be back in New York in 2 days with your bread. Well, unfortunately, instead of coming to Detroit with us, as we had talked about, Big Ed decided to go shoot another move down to Baltimore. His people in Baltimore had flipped on him. As soon as he gets off the train in Baltimore, he gets bagged. But the flip side of that was, because of his legal troubles which started, he ended up having to shut down Indigo Blues. So Money Walt and Big J Walt, who was the promoters for Indigo Blues, had all these acts, again, Mike Epps, T.K. Kirkland, Cheryl Underwood, J.B. Smooth, Darnell Rawlings. All these comedians was looking for work. Pops had bought the Cotillion Club. I introduced Money Walt and Jay to Pops, told him, look, we can start blowing up the Cotillion Club using these acts from New York. We went on to do a whole series, bringing top flight comedians, all these guys. We became the Def Comedy Jam, not of New York, but the Def Comedy Jam of Detroit, but this was the ground zero for all that action. It was right here at the Marquis Marriott, 45th Street, between Broadway and 8th Avenue. This was the office really for the Pakistan Blood. So, because most of the work either came in through New York or through out in California, it'd be here, unfortunately, where Schoolyard George would end up catching his case. Muhammad's people had got compromised. Schoolyard George walked right into an undercover operation with the DEA, and being the soldier that he was and is, when it went down, all Schoolyard George told those people is, just give me my 20 and send me someplace warm. And the feds appreciated his realness so much that that's what they did. They gave George his 20. He ended up having to do about 16 of the 20, and never rolled on us for forever being George's debt. But Terrell, Shauna, Trina, Rhonda, the whole crew from from Detroit, got opportunities to experience New York and the game. Again, it's levels to this stuff, man. It ain't all grimy street corner stuff. Sometime at a certain level, the game is actually going down in environments like this. New York City, Marquis Marriott. So just another story from back in the day. Again, checking us out on YouTube. Hit that like, that share, and subscribe button.
1973. The Detroit Free Press's front page proclaims, "Dope kingpins get away with it." They had names like Jesse James, Pretty Ricky, the Black Greek, and Mr. Clean. 2 of the 12 men listed as Detroit's biggest heroin dealers were next-door neighbors, and in reality, they were the 2 largest heroin dealers in Detroit, dwarfing the other men on the list.
Got 12 kilos. We gonna cut it 10 times at a minimum, so it would have been 120 kilos.
The audience needs to understand the significance of black entrepreneurship.
Customer give me the money, put the money through a chute in the door. They would drop the dope down right in front of the door.
And everybody was getting money.
Everybody was getting money that time.
Always bags of money coming and going in the house.
Almost to the ceiling, just a room full of money stacked to the ceiling.
Eddie had shot past everybody in the city put together.
The gentleman gangster. You meet the right people, make the right connections to make everyone happy, and do it all without having to really brandish a gun.
Nicky Bond, snitch. Frank Lucas, snitch. Where's the real ones?
I said, give me the pistol. And I said, I should blow your goddamn brains out right now.
The 750 murders last year was a record for Detroit, murder capital of the country.
This is a story about a real one. From the beginning to the end, never telling on nobody.
Eddie the Fat Man Jackson, charismatic son of a pool hall owner, and his chief lieutenant, Courtney the Field Marshal Brown, a former city bus driver, had built an empire on a par with men like Nicky Barnes and Frank Lucas of New York. But theirs was a very different and in many ways more sophisticated operation than Barnes and Lucas's, based on family ties and finesse more than murder and mayhem.
I went into that foolishness. It was business to me.
He kept it so separate, and he's my Little League baseball coach.
Family came first.
He would keep a pistol at the bottom of the Halloween bag.
Boom, 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 boom. I'm gonna shoot you right down.
We had guys working 3 shifts. They were just like they worked at Ford. We paid vacation. They worked 8 hours a day. They got paid for overtime. And we had a bunch of law workers.
Okay, I'm gonna take 250 people. I got $1 million to blow. We all gonna go down here and blow this $1 million together.
Throwing money out of the car down in the Brewster Project.
Me and Eddie used to buy 2 and 3 keys of cocaine just for our personal.
The entertainers wanted to take pictures with the likes of those men like Eddie Jackson.
You name them, we served them. Richard Pryor, the Dale, the OJ.
It's just a couple of old white guys sitting around a desk with a whole bunch of people bringing them money in. And what they were doing they were money launderers.
You know, you ask yourself questions like tobacco. How many people died last year from tobacco? When we started talking about the moral value of what Eddie Jackson and others do. I'm not condoning what they do. What I'm simply saying is that there are many on that playing field.
People from Israel, there's some people from South America, there's some people from West Africa, and then it's myself.
Everybody in the city knew Eddie Jackson. And everybody knew he was on top of the pyramid. I was his right-hand man.